What they want to do is the Secretary of the Homeland Security Department, Jed Johnson, said he is looking into designating our election process, our voting system, as, quote, critical infrastructure, which would therefore fall under the purview of Homeland Security. And I think they have 16 other areas of critical infrastructure that they're in charge of, roads and bridges and reservoirs and things of that nature. So,
well, you know, usually when they come up with something, even war, they have to have a pretext, and the pretext is pretend. How are we going to deceive the people? How are we going to scare the people? So they're having a pretext for this because there has been talk, and most people think the elections are probably rigged. I certainly think they are because no matter what happens, the same deep state controls everything. So our definition of rigging is different from one to another. But, you know, they got involved a little bit in foreign policy in order to, you know, justify this. And it's always national security. Yeah. And well, what is it that they're saying now that is justifying what we're doing?
Well, you know, apparently some voter enrolls in Arizona and Illinois were hacked. You know, that would be the names of the addresses of voters and that sort of thing. So it really technically didn't have anything to do with the outcome. At least in Illinois, they're not even connected to the internet when they vote. So it was data about voters. But immediately they said, oh, it was Russian hackers who did it. Without any evidence, they didn't have any evidence that it was. But as you point out, it gives it this foreign dimension. And as we've seen in the media over the past week or so, certainly the Clinton campaign has bent over backwards to try to convince everyone that Putin's hand is inside the Trump puppet, you know.
Right.
So you put the two together and you think, okay, Putin is going to rig the elections for Trump. Therefore, we got to get Homeland Security involved to save us from the rigging.
Yes, and there's also stories, obviously off the wall, that, you know, that if an individual, you know, article saying, well, if one of the candidates dies, but, you know, the elections could be held up pretty easily. I'm not sure that is in the law, but law doesn't mean anything. So it depends on the chaos. And, you know, this goes along with some work that we have done on emergency powers. You know, the president can declare emergency, and he really can take over. This is just more like centralizing those powers into one unit. But the president has ominous powers under declaration, and the Congress doesn't have to vote on that particular thing. They already have. They grant it. If there's a declaration of an emergency, they can do this, and they can, and the president can take over, which obviously is on the books, very scary. And now they're doing this. So I'm not predicting. I haven't been in this position of predicting that, you know, before November, you know, the really big event is going to happen politically. But that doesn't mean it couldn't happen. And they're always working under the assumption that it could happen, and they're going to solidify this and say, well, the Congress gave us this authority, and now there's an emergency. You don't want to have total chaos. There'll be chaos in the streets, and who's going to pass out the orders to our troops overseas? And they'll have all kinds of reasons. So the pretext will be there, and people will be frightened. And unfortunately, I'm afraid too many of them would go along with it.
A lot of power creep toward the executive branch throughout the decades, as you always talked about. But really, it accelerated with 9/11. It really kicked into gear with 9/11. You know, when everyone was so eager to give the president all of this authority.
Yeah. Now, you know, Trump's been talking a little bit about the rigged election, and I believe elections have been rigged, but it's worse than ever. And I think he's correct, but I'm not sure his understanding of the problem and what he thinks should be done is the same. Because my understanding of the rigged election is the elections don't matter. You know, this is a ritual that we go through. And some people say, well, yeah, but you participated. You ran for office. You got in, and maybe you did a little bit of good as an elected official. But I think the big difference is if you go there, that you don't go there to work within the system and believe that you're going to reform it, and all of a sudden you're going to have control of legislation and become a chairman of a committee, and things are going to change. But if a person is involved in the system, I think it has to be for one thing to expose what they're doing. And unfortunately, though, some people think that they can get in and change things. My belief is that the control is the deep state, and people have to realize that. But now that deep state, which seems to be, ushering around the Department of Homeland Security, is manifold. It deals with the media, the military, the medical care system, the whole works, the banking system, and those powers are already there. And I think those individuals who are behind the scenes, who really, find out what the policies are going to be, regardless of who's in office, know exactly what we argue, that this place, our country, and our financial system and the foreign policy is very precarious, and something terrible is going to happen. So I think the more you hear about this stuff, the more power given to the Department of Homeland Security. They may have false flags, they may do a lot of things, but no matter how an emergency comes up, they're going to make use of it. And the use of it isn't to say, hey, how are we going to protect the American people? Are they worrying when they talk about doing something about rigged elections to make sure the votes are counted? No, they're making sure that the votes aren't counted and they're irrelevant, and the government has all this power, and that they have, in a way, make it a lot easier to hack into our elections, and even, the very first, one of the first elections was in 1976. We had some fancy machines. I don't think they use them anymore. But people came and explained to me exactly how they can set these machines not to be accurate, and they were sort of primitive. So I'm sure that type of thing is available now. And just think of if that can be done at a local level for an election here and there, it's horrible. But can you think of, centralizing it, turning the whole power over to the Department of Homeland Security for protecting us, and make us safe and secure. And the people say, well, we have to be safe and secure, so therefore they'll protect us.